Deep Dive with Mohyu.
Welcome back to Deep Dive with Mohyu. In this episode, we're diving into the crucial topic of internal quality control in medical laboratory sciences. Internal quality control is essential for ensuring the accuracy and reliability of laboratory test results.
And as medical laboratory scientists, essentially everything we do ties back to that idea, right? Reliable result. So let's unpack exactly how internal quality control, or IQC, safeguards our work, and dig into some of the nuances you might not think about every day.
Okay, so we're talking IQC. To get started, could you give us an overview of how internal quality control works in the lab?
Of course. At its core, IQC involves incorporating quality control materials, which mimic real patient samples, and analyzing them right alongside those patient samples. We then use statistical analysis, often visualized with tools like Levey-Jennings charts and Westgard rules, to evaluate the results from these control materials. This analysis helps us determine whether our test system is performing reliably or if there's a problem we need to address before releasing patient results.
So these control materials, how do those work in practice? What are the different types?
No.
And what makes them so important?
Think of control materials as our test system stand-ins for real patients. They're commercially produced to mimic the behavior of actual patient samples and come in both lyophilized and liquid forms. Their importance lies in the fact that we treat them exactly like patient samples throughout the entire testing process. By subjecting them to the same conditions, they act as a mirror, reflecting the accuracy and precision of our methods.
I see. They're like a built-in quality check at every step.
Mm-hmm.
What should we keep in mind when choosing and handling these control materials?
First, consider the types of controls needed for your tests. We generally use controls at medically significant levels, meaning one within the reference interval, mimicking a normal result, and another at an abnormal level, often elevated, to assess how the test performs across different result ranges. For qualitative tests, we would use both positive and negative controls. And speaking of consistency, when you find a reliable LUT number of a control material, stick with it for at least a year. This helps minimize variability in your data and makes it easier to spot trends or shifts over time.
That makes sense. Consistency is key when we're looking for subtle variations. Is there anything else we should be particularly careful about with
control materials?
Absolutely. Precise handling is crucial,
yes,
especially for lyophilized controls. Any deviation from the manufacturer's instructions during reconstitution can introduce variability and impact your results. Remember, we're aiming to mirror real patient sample handling as closely as possible. So we've got our control materials running alongside patient samples. What's next? How do we actually evaluate that data and make decisions about our test system's performance?
That's where data evaluation comes in. And this is where those Levey-Jennings charts and Westgard rules we mentioned earlier become crucial tools. They help us interpret the control results, look for patterns, and ultimately decide if our test system is reliable.
Let's start with Levey-Jennings charts. I remember those from school, but I think a refresher would be helpful.
Think of a Levey-Jennings chart as a visual timeline for your control data. Each control gets its own chart, typically constructed for a month at a time. We plot each control value against the mean, plus or minus 3 standard deviations. This creates a visual representation of how the control is performing over time, letting us see patterns easily.
Right. So those charts have all those dots and lines. What are the key things we should be looking for when we're examining a Levey-Jennings chart?
Primarily, we're looking for any data points falling outside the acceptable range, which is typically defined as the mean, plus or minus 2 standard deviations. Anything outside that range is a red flag and signals that we need to investigate further. But it's not just about individual points. We also need to pay attention to trends and shifts in the data.
So it's like we're looking for both individual outliers and for broader patterns over time. How would you explain the difference between a trend and a shift on the chart?
A trend is a gradual change in the mean, where 6 or more consecutive values move in the same direction, either increasing or decreasing. This can suggest a subtle ongoing issue with the test system. Meanwhile, a shift is a sudden change in the mean, where consecutive values abruptly jump above or below the established range. This suggests a more sudden and potentially more significant problem.
That makes sense. It's like the difference between a slow leak and a burst pipe. Are there other patterns on the chart that might signal a problem with the test system?
Definitely. Increased dispersion on the chart, where control values become more spread out, can indicate a loss of precision in the testing. This means our results are becoming less consistent, which can also impact the reliability of patient results.
So Levey-Jennings charts provide a really visual way to keep tabs on our controls over time. But you mentioned another method, Westgard multi-rule. Can you tell us more about that?
Westgard rules add another layer of sophistication to our IQC analysis. They're a set of criteria that use multiple control measurements to evaluate the data and make decisions about the validity of a batch of tests. They're particularly useful for detecting subtle systematic errors that might not be immediately apparent on a Levey-Jennings chart.
It sounds like Westgard rules are a powerful tool for catching those sneaky errors. Can you walk us through some of the key rules and what types of errors they're designed to detect?
Of course. Let's start with one of the more common rules, the 1-2s rule.
Okay, 1-2s. What does that one tell us?
This rule is triggered when a single control value in a run exceeds the mean plus or minus 2 standard deviations. It's important to note that this isn't an immediate rejection of the run. It serves as more of a warning signal, prompting us to investigate further and check for other rule violations.
So it's like a first alert, take a closer look. What are some of the other Westgard rules we should be familiar with?
Let's talk about the 1-3s rule. This one is more serious. It's triggered when a single control value exceeds the mean plus or minus 3 standard deviations, signaling a higher probability of random error.
Random error. Could you clarify what that means
Yeah.
in the context of IQC?
Random error refers to unpredictable variation in the testing process. It can be caused by factors like slight temperature fluctuations, minor pipetting discrepancies, or even the inherent variability of the reagents we use. A 1-3s violation suggests that something happened during the run to cause that particular point to be so far out, but it might not be a consistent problem.
I get it. Random errors are like those little unpredictable hiccups.
Yeah.
That can happen in any process. I'm assuming then there's also systematic error.
Exactly right. And that's where rules like the 2-2s rule come into play. This rule is triggered when 2 consecutive control values exceed the same 2 standard deviation limits. So either both are above the mean plus 2 standard deviations, or both are below the mean minus 2 standard deviations. This pattern suggests a systematic bias in the testing process, meaning something is affecting all our results in a predictable way.
Okay, so systematic error is more like a consistent shift or bias that's affecting the whole batch. I'm starting to see how these different rules help us tease out those different types of errors. What are some of the other Westgard rules that can help us with this detective work?
We have a few more key players on our team. The R4s rule, for example, helps us detect another type of random error. It's triggered when one control value in a run is above the mean plus 2 standard deviations, and the other control value is below the mean minus 2 standard deviations, giving us a 4 standard deviation spread. This big spread is a red flag for significant random error.
Got it. That wide spread between the two controls is a giveaway. What about the 4-1s rule? What does that one tell us?
The 4-1s rule is back in the realm of systematic error. It's triggered when 4 consecutive control values are all on the same side of the mean, exceeding either the mean plus 1 standard deviation or the mean minus 1 standard deviation. This consistent directional bias suggests a creeping systematic problem that's affecting the test system over time.
So it's like a slower, more insidious type of systematic error that might not be as immediately obvious. And finally, we have the 10x rule.
Exactly. The 10x rule is our last line of defense against persistent systematic error. It's triggered when 10 consecutive control values fall on the same side of mean, either all above or all below. This pattern is a clear indication of a significant and persistent bias in the testing process.
Wow, I'm really starting to see how these Westgard rules work together like a team to help us spot these different types of errors. What happens when one of these Westgard rules is violated? What's our next step?
That's when our troubleshooting skills come into play. If a control value triggers a Westgard rule violation, we can't ignore it. We need to investigate like detectives and figure out what's going on.
So we have a rule violation. What are our first steps in troubleshooting that? Where do we even begin?
First, don't panic. Most of the time, these issues have relatively simple explanations and solutions. It's a matter of systematically working through potential problems and eliminating them one by one. Remember, we've been doing this for a while now. Trust your experience.
Okay, so what are some of the most common culprits we should be looking for when a control value is out of range?
Think about things like technique, reagents, and equipment. Could there have been a pipetting error? Has a reagent expired or been stored improperly? Is the instrument properly calibrated? Those are good places to start.
So we're retracing our steps, double-checking our work, looking for any inconsistencies that could be causing the Problem. What role does documentation play in this process? I imagine it's pretty important.
Documentation is absolutely crucial, not only for tracking our troubleshooting steps,
Right.
but also as a vital record of our lab's commitment to quality. It's like our quality assurance diary,
Yeah.
showing that we're taking the necessary steps to ensure accurate results.
Right. It's like our proof that we're doing our due diligence when it comes to quality control. Speaking of documentation, what are some key things you should be sure to document related to IQC?
We should document everything, from the seemingly minor details like lot numbers and expiration dates of our control materials, to calibration records for our instruments, and of course the results of our control runs. Any QC violations and the corrective actions we take need to be thoroughly documented as well. And don't forget about documenting any training and competency assessments conducted for staff.
It sounds like meticulous documentation is really the backbone of a solid IQC program. We've covered a lot of ground so far, from control materials to Levey-Jennings charts and Westgard rules. But I'm curious, how does all of this fit into the bigger picture of quality management in the lab?
That's a great question. IQC is a crucial piece of the puzzle when it comes to a comprehensive quality management system, or QMS. A QMS is a holistic, structured approach to ensuring quality in all aspects of the lab's operations, encompassing everything from the pre-analytical phase, like how we handle specimens, whole Roth, all the way to post-analytical processes, like result reporting and interpretation. It's about having established policies, procedures, and processes in place to minimize errors, ensure accuracy, and strive for continuous improvement.
So it's not just about the testing itself. It's about every aspect of what we do in the lab. Where does IQC fit within that framework?
IQC plays a vital role in that system by monitoring and controlling the analytical phase of testing. By carefully scrutinizing this phase, we can prevent errors from reaching the patient and contribute to the overall reliability and trustworthiness of the results we produce.
I see. Like IQC is a key checkpoint within that larger QMS, ensuring the quality of the testing process itself.
Precisely. It's an essential safeguard, helping us achieve the ultimate goal of delivering the highest quality patient care.
This has been a really insightful discussion. We've delved into details of control materials, the ins and outs of Levey-Jennings charts, Westgard rules, and even touched upon the importance of troubleshooting and documentation. But before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, I'd love to hear your perspective on something. We focus heavily on the technical aspects of IQC, but what about the human element? What role do ethics and professional responsibility play in all of this?
That's an excellent point, Akshu, and one that's often overlooked. While we have these tools and systems in place, it ultimately comes down to our individual commitment to quality and patient care. As medical laboratory scientists, we have a responsibility to ensure the integrity of our work, and that extends beyond simply following procedures. IQC provides the framework. It's our ethical obligation to use it diligently, to constantly seek ways to improve, and to never compromise on quality.
That's a powerful reminder that our work has real-world consequences. I think it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day routine, but at the end of the day, it's all about the patients and ensuring they receive the best possible care.
Absolutely. Every decision we make, every step we take in IQC ultimately impacts patient safety and the quality of their care. It's a responsibility we should never take lightly.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's a good place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into internal quality control. And I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation in the next part.
Me too. There's still so much more to explore, and I'm eager to share some insights that might surprise even seasoned medical laboratory scientists. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to part 2 of our deep dive into internal quality control, or IQC. I'm really enjoying this conversation so far. It's fascinating to see all these familiar concepts from a fresh perspective.
I'm glad to hear that. It's always rewarding to dive deep into a topic that's so foundational to our work.
Exactly. As you said earlier, everything we do in the lab ties back to accurate, reliable results. And those results depend on robust IQC practices.
That's the essence of it. And in this part, I'd like to explore some aspects of IQC that often don't get the attention they deserve, areas that can really elevate our practice.
I'm all ears. What are we diving into next?
Let's talk about competency assessment. As medical laboratory scientists, we're constantly honing our skills, but how do we ensure everyone in the lab is consistently meeting the high standards required for accurate testing and reliable IQC practices?
That's a great point. We can have the best IQC procedures and protocols in the world, but if the people implementing them aren't adequately trained and competent,
Right.
those systems can crumble.
Exactly. We can't just assume competency. We need to actively assess and nurture it. It's all about creating a culture of continuous learning and improvement.
So how do we go about assessing competency in the context of IQC? What are some effective methods?
There's no one-size-fits-all approach. The key is to choose methods that are relevant to the specific tasks and responsibilities of each team member. Written tests can be helpful for assessing theoretical knowledge, but they need to be paired with practical observations to see how that knowledge is applied in real-world scenarios.
Right. It's about seeing how the theory translates into practice. Are there other ways we can assess competency?
Absolutely. Case studies are a fantastic tool for gauging critical thinking and problem-solving skills.
Yeah.
Presenting staff with realistic scenarios that involve IQC challenges and asking them to walk through their decision-making process can be incredibly insightful.
That's a great way to simulate real-world lab situations
Yeah.
and see how staff members would respond. I'm also curious about the role of training. How do we keep everyone up to date on the latest IQC practices and ensure they're confident in their roles?
Ongoing training is paramount. We should regularly review and update our IQC procedures, incorporating any new guidelines, best practices, or technological advancements. And just like with competency assessment, training should be tailored to individual roles and responsibilities.
I'm imagining a mix of in-person workshops, online modules, maybe even some peer-to-peer learning opportunities.
Exactly. Utilizing a variety of methods helps cater to different learning styles and keeps the training engaging. It's also crucial to foster a culture where questions are encouraged and open dialogue about ITC practices is welcomed.
That open communication is so important. It creates a safe space for people to learn, share their experiences, and even challenge existing practices if they see room for improvement.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about creating a continuous learning environment where everyone feels empowered to contribute to the overall quality of the lab's work.
This makes me think about something we touched upon earlier, documentation.
Right.
How does thorough documentation tie into competency assessment and training?
Documentation is like the glue that holds all of these elements together. It provides a tangible record of our competency assessment activities, training programs, and the outcomes of those efforts. It also demonstrates our commitment to quality and transparency to any external auditors or inspectors who might review our practices.
So it's like our quality assurance portfolio, showcasing the steps we're taking to ensure our team's competency and the overall reliability of our results.
Precisely. And this documentation should go beyond just recording dates and attendance. It should capture the specific skills assessed, the content covered in training programs, and any feedback or areas for improvement identified.
That level of detail is incredibly valuable. It allows us to track progress, identify any knowledge gaps, and tailor training to address those needs effectively.
You're absolutely right. It's about moving beyond simply checking boxes and creating a system that genuinely supports ongoing learning and development within the lab.
This conversation is really highlighting the interconnectedness of all these elements: competency assessment, training, documentation, and how they all contribute to a robust IQC program.
And ultimately, they all contribute to something even more important: patient safety.
That brings us back to the heart of what we do.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the technicalities of IQC, but at the end of the day, it's all about ensuring those results are accurate and reliable so patients receive the best possible care.
Couldn't agree more. It's about recognizing the weight of our responsibility as medical laboratory scientists and ensuring that everything we do, from running controls to documenting our actions, is done with the utmost care and precision.
I'm curious, what are some of the consequences we might see if IQC isn't taken seriously? What are the potential implications of a weak IQC program?
The ramifications of a flawed IQC system can be far-reaching. Inaccurate test results can lead to misdiagnosis, delayed treatment, and potentially even harm to patients. It can also damage the reputation of the lab, erode trust among clinicians, and lead to costly repeat testing.
Those are serious consequences
Yeah.
that we definitely want to avoid. I can see how a weak IQC program could create a ripple effect of negative outcomes.
Exactly. And let's not forget the financial implications. Repeat testing, investigation of erroneous results, and potential litigation all add up to significant financial burdens for the lab.
Right. The cost of poor quality
Mm-hmm.
can quickly outweigh the investment in a robust IQC program. We've talked about what can go wrong when IQC is neglected. But what about the flip side? What are some of the benefits of having a strong, well-implemented IQC program in place?
A robust IQC program is an investment that pays dividends in multiple ways. First and foremost, it promotes patient safety by ensuring accurate and reliable test results. This, in turn, builds trust with clinicians and enhances the lab's reputation for quality.
It's like a quality assurance seal of approval that says you can trust the results coming from this lab.
Precisely. And beyond the clinical benefits, a strong IQC program can actually improve efficiency and reduce costs in the long run. By minimizing errors and the need for repeat testing, we streamline workflows and optimize resource utilization.
It's a win-win scenario. Better quality, improved efficiency, and ultimately better patient care.
Yeah.
I think this conversation is really highlighting the value of a holistic approach to IQC.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's not just about running controls and plotting data on charts. It's about understanding the principles behind those actions, embracing a culture of continuous improvement, and fostering a deep sense of responsibility within the lab team.
That's a powerful message to leave our listeners with. It's about seeing IQC more than just a set of procedures. It's a mindset, a commitment to excellence that should permeate every aspect of our work.
Absolutely. By embracing that mindset, we elevate our practice, ensure the reliability of our results, and ultimately contribute to the best possible patient care.
This conversation has been incredibly insightful. We've explored the nuances of competency assessment, training, and documentation, discussed the potential consequences of a weak IQC program, and highlighted the numerous benefits of a strong, holistic approach. We've covered so much ground, and yet I feel like we've just scratched the surface of this fascinating topic.
I completely agree. And there are even more layers to uncover as we delve into emerging trends and future directions in IQC.
That's a perfect segue to the final part of our deep dive. I'm eager to explore what the future holds for IQC and how we can continue to elevate our practice.
Me too. Get ready for some thought-provoking insights that will challenge your perspectives and inspire you to embrace innovation in the realm of IQC.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into IQC. It's been quite a journey so far, hasn't it?
It really has. We've explored the core principles, the challenges, the human element, but as we all know, the world of laboratory science never stands still. So for this last part, I think it's time we turn our attention to the future of IQC.
I like where this is going. I'm always excited to see what's on the horizon. You know, those advancements that can push our field forward. What are some of the key trends shaping the future of IQC?
One of the most significant trends is the rise of automation and data analysis tools. Imagine systems that can automatically flag potential errors, analyze control data in real time, and even suggest corrective actions. We're moving beyond manual data entry and tedious calculations, freeing up our time for more critical tasks.
That sounds incredible. It's like having a digital IQC assistant working alongside us. What other game changers are on the horizon?
Think about the power of connectivity. We're already seeing the emergence of interconnected laboratory systems, and this trend is only going to accelerate. Imagine a world where IQC data is seamlessly shared across instruments, labs, even healthcare systems. This level of connectivity could revolutionize how we monitor and manage quality, enabling us to identify and address issues on a much broader scale.
That kind of data sharing and collaboration could be incredibly powerful, spotting those subtle trends that might be missed at an individual lab level. Are there any other innovations that have you particularly excited about the future of IQC?
One area that's really fascinating is the development of new control materials. We're seeing a shift towards more sophisticated materials that can better mimic the complexity of real patient samples and even materials tailored to specific disease states or testing methodologies. These advancements will allow us to fine-tune our IQC processes and further enhance the reliability of our results.
It's incredible to think about how far we've come in terms of IQC and how much potential there is for continued innovation. As we wrap up our deep dive, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will carry with them?
I'd say this: embrace a mindset of continuous learning and curiosity when it comes to IQC. Don't shy away from new technologies, question existing practices, and always strive for excellence. The future of IQC is bright, and by staying engaged and informed, we can all play a role in shaping it for the better.
Beautifully said. I want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights on this crucial topic. I think this deep dive has given us all a renewed appreciation for the importance of internal quality control, not just as a set of procedures,
Mm-hmm.
but as a fundamental pillar of quality patient care.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to dive deep into this topic with you.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on Deep Dive with Mohyu. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of the world of laboratory science.